Hey there, and welcome to Brain Body Biome Inspo, which is where I pop in every week and make sure that we're talking, that we're connecting about the connection of the brain body biome. And it looks like, okay, good. Just checking, I'm streaming to a couple platforms today and just making sure we're all set on all of them. And welcome, welcome. I love coming in every Monday. I just feel like it's a great way to start the week with a little bit of something for your brain body biome, i.e., your gut. And I'm always about very easy to apply tools that you can take and use in your daily life to help support the health of your brain body biome in inspo. And if you're here with me live, whether you're here on in our Facebook group or on YouTube, just drop a comment. Why if you've been here before, and an N if you've never been here before. I know a lot of you watch these via replay in our Facebook group. Keep in mind, you can ask your questions even if you're watching via replay. You don't have to be here live. But today, I want to first ask you, did you get my email that I sent yesterday? It went out yesterday afternoon. It was a follow-up to last week's Brain Body Biome Inspo, where we talked about that energy shift, the challenge to our nervous system after doing a time change, right? After springing forward. So yes, I see Amy. Hi, Amy. It's good to see you here. I love when you can pop in here with us. And so that time change can be an energy drain. So I introduced a little something last week, one movement that's very developmental, very nervous system regulation oriented and focused. And then I sent an email yesterday that took that move down to the floor, which is going deeper into development. And then I added another move for your spine. Now you could do these on a bed or a sofa if getting on the floor is a challenge right now. That's okay. But those two simple moves that I put together in yesterday's video are great for your energy, to stay grounded and to stay healthy in your spinal movements, in your trunk. Keep the muscular system, the myofascial system, the bony structure healthy and supporting so you can function in the way that you want to. So make sure if you didn't get that, you can just drop a comment and I'll make sure that we find out what happened. Maybe it's in your spam, we'll get it to you. But I mentioned that also because today my intention is to share with you around updates around neuroplasticity from a course that I just went to. And in that course, I learned a few things. There was a lot of review, but I wanted to really find out about the newest research. And it was interesting because this professor, and I'll tell you a bit about his work in a moment, he talked about how a great example, a very timely example, since it was just a few days after springing forward, of neuroplasticity is accommodating or assimilating, if you will, adapting, I think is the word I'm really looking for, to a time change. It can be really hard. I work with a lot of people that struggle with that, and nervous system regulation can be a huge part to make that easier. But he talked about how that is a great example of neuroplasticity. So if we haven't connected before, I am Kelly Hale. Welcome. I have the absolute joy and privilege of helping people move out of fight, flight, freeze to find the ease and the health of their brain, body, and biome via nervous system regulation. And so that means that I nerd out on anything brain health, brain science, brain body connection, right? And this has been a long time love of mine. Actually, I'm a little sinusy today. Excuse me, I'm gonna take a sip of water. My love of brain science started way, way back in undergrad. I actually took a role one summer working in a research lab. I think all that gunk in my head from my sinuses is making my words come out wrong. But anywho, I took a job in a research lab working on the HPA axis. And the HPA axis, in case you've probably heard of it a little bit, but it's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And that is a great system to look at because it deals with stress, it deals with resiliency. And so I worked in that lab that summer, many years ago. And I knew I didn't want to be a researcher. I knew I wanted to be someone that worked with the people and applied the work And I really wanted to do that. So yet I did it because I was curious, and I also thought it would look good on graduate school applications. And what we found, the research was not complete in the summer that I was there, but certainly the stressors, and there were different ways that we applied stressors to these rodents. You know, I can't even believe I worked in a research lab, but it with rodents, because I'm not a fan of rodents. But what we did find in the stages of research that I got to be engaged with there were changes in the HPA axis of the brain tissue when stressors were applied to these rodents. So anyway, again, I'm not a researcher, but I just got the chance to nerd out at a neuroplasticity course brought to us locally for healthcare providers. It was a whole day just going through research, and it was with a professor from Penn, Dr. Brock Kerwin, and he was really great. Shared a lot of review of brain science and the recent research about neuroplasticity. Now, so we're all on the same page, because I know we're all hearing about neuroplasticity, and I shared a quote about the neurons that wire together fire together, and that is so true, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But the actual definition of neuroplasticity, which I want to differentiate from neurogenesis because sometimes people confuse those, neuroplasticity is the ability of the nervous system to change its activity in response to an external or an internal stimuli. And the way that it changes its activity is by reorganizing the structure, functions, or connections. So I always talk about nervous system organization. So this is more in that deep cellular level with the neurons, right? So it's getting a little bit more granular. Now that's from a 2019 definition, but it's still well regarded as the definition of neuroplasticity. Now that is different than neurogenesis, which is the generating of new neurons, and that happens a lot in early development. Infants, babies, toddlers, young children, they have a lot of neurogenesis. And a lot of us as adults want to know, do we generate new neurons as we grow, as we age? And so the jury's still out on that, is what he said. And some papers say that they do, some papers say that we don't. I'm going to keep acting as if it's possible, and that's the work that I love to share. So he did say that the research is very split on that, and I'm going to hope that we have more clarity soon. And that's one of the reasons I went to this course, was to see if there were any definitive updates in the research. So how do we increase neuroplasticity? Now, a lot of you have read different things and observed different things. And the way that he talked about we are able to increase our neuroplasticity is through environmental enrichment, which I'll talk about that in a moment, exercise, stress management, diet, and sleep. Now, he didn't go too deeply into diet or sleep, and he really talked, diet was basically Mediterranean diet. So if you're just joining us, I'm seeing a few questions come through on YouTube. We're talking about neuroplasticity with some updates from a course that I recently took about neuroplasticity. So here's the thing that I think is most exciting and most interesting that really applies to what we do. As you can see, I have the Pilates apparatus behind me, all the stuff on the wall, the big balls. So you know that my work entails movement, therapeutic and health promoting movement. But the number one activity for increasing neuroplasticity is exercise. The most effective enrichment, if you will, for neuroplasticity is exercise. Now, again, the research was done with rodents, and a lot of it was setting up their environment almost with little sort of obstacle courses and spending time in the wheel. And does this translate to humans? Well, I know the jury's still out on that. There is some research on humans, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But the whole idea is that having activity that is diverse, that challenges us, not only physical activity, but again, exercise is number one. And I'll talk about what type of exercise in a moment. So stay with us here. But the considerations he mentioned were very interesting. And as we age, we need to think about these things, but he talked about sound. If we have decreased hearing, there are now research studies to show that that is actually associated with dementias, including Alzheimer's. So thinking about the idea of if we're losing our hearing, and some people, when they're losing their hearing, they don't get assistive devices. So what this means is we need to make sure that if someone is starting to lose their hearing, that they're actually getting assistive devices, hearing aids. So that's an important consideration. And those that did musical training early in life had less cognitive decline. So if you studied an instrument, even if you don't continue as an adult, if you studied it early in life, you have a greater chance of keeping those neurons firing and wiring together, right? As the quote that I shared on my social said. So the whole idea is that, hey, maybe you didn't study. I know I didn't study an instrument other than the silly recorder. I did vocal training somewhat, but who says we as adults can't pick up and learn an instrument in our adult years? That's a great way to keep those neural pathways stimulated and support neuroplasticity. And it also made me think about, because the work I do movement wise is very unique. We really focus on layering in multiple senses and going back through developmental patterns. And so a lot of times we're doing sounding and adding visual exercises. And so the research was not specific to that, but I can't help but extrapolate that doing developmental movements with the nervous system components of sounding and vision combined with the movement is going to really support that neuroplasticity. Now that, again, is my opinion. I don't have any research on that per se, but I have tons of anecdotal situations where we see it helps people. Now, I mentioned vision. Vision is also connected to cognitive loss. So what does that mean? As you're aging, if you have visual challenges, get a corrective assistive device, i.e. glasses or contacts, whatever it might be. Another interesting thing that he mentioned is that chewing is really important for cognition. So as people age, if they lose their teeth, it's important to have dentures or to have implants, because it's tied to having most of your teeth or having implants, having an ability to chew is tied to increased frontal lobe. That's really important. That's where the executive functioning happens. It's tied to increased frontal lobe volume and cognition. So I thought that was really interesting. And he talked about chewing gum to increase focus and attention. So that's kind of interesting. My teen daughter is going to be all over the gum piece and want to chew more gum. So that also made me think of the Moro reflex, going back to my training, because the Moro reflex is very much about being able to have that upper palate balanced. And so having the upper palate balanced is really important. But a lot of the adults that I work with, they have issues where the upper palate is out of balance because their Moro reflex is tripped up, or other reasons, maybe some dental work that they didn't do integrative work afterwards. So we really want to think about keeping our teeth or having implants as we age to keep ourselves developing and keeping strong cognition. So, and also chewing, right? And I think about this a lot because older people often in situations as they age, they might be drinking a lot of Ensure or something like that. So we need to find a way to keep them chewing to get that input. And as an OT, we talk about the compressive input of chewing. So thinking about that. So bottom line here, you want to make sure as you're aging that you correct for any hearing changes, loss, vision changes, loss, and that you keep your teeth and keep chewing. Now again, when we do our brain gym repatterning, when we do our nervous system repatterning, we are doing eye movements, we are doing vocalizations, right? So definitely seeing that we can bring those layers in. And yes, I see a comment coming in. Chewing gum is part of my after sugary plan to encourage my intestines to function and get things moving again. Yes, Amy, thank you for sharing that, because what that's going to do is stimulate the saliva and the juices to help with digestion. or I said after surgery plan. Yes, having GI surgery, that's a great thing to do. And of course you want to make sure you choose gums that aren't a lot of sugar. Thankfully now we have ones that don't have aspartame, because that's not good either. We have the xylitol. Just be careful. Xylitol is poison to dogs, probably cats too, I'm not sure. So keep it up and away from your dogs. All right, so I'm going to share a little bit more. I don't like to take these too long, but I want to share a little bit more with you and then give you an exercise that can help you with some brain-body connections and support that neuroplasticity. So what I want to do first, though, is come back to the topic of exercise with this research. They did a study on cardio versus stretching with older adults and what it did for neuroplasticity. So what do you think of the two? They had two groups. One was doing cardio, one was doing stretching. What do you think was the best form of exercise for neuroplasticity? Do you have an idea of that? Now, there's been a lot of articles, so you may know this already, but it was actually the cardio group that had more benefits in the neuroplasticity. So the cardio group are the people that are getting, and you think about it, it's getting blood flow to the brain, right? Doing the cardio. And it was interesting because he pointed out that the cardio, ideally, there were better or increased benefits with greater than 30 minutes. So the stretching group did not see benefits towards neuroplasticity, but the cardio group did. Now, as you're aging, you probably need to do some mobility exercises. I'm not a fan of traditional stretching, more with isometrics and corrective exercise type stretching, but doing some stretching will keep you able to access the cardio, right? So thinking of that as important as well. Then they also pointed out that strength training also is beneficial for our neuroplasticity. And so I love that idea of exercise because I'm all about helping people regulate the nervous system, improve the health of the brain, body, and biome, their gut, via movement-based and gentle hands-on experiences so that they can gently increase that integration and regulation of the nervous system. So some key takeaways, no surprise here. With our brain, just like we say with our body, move it or lose it. With our brain, we want to think use it or lose it. Those synaptic connections between neurons that are stimulated get strengthened the more that you stimulate them. So study that language, study that instrument, keep moving. Now, I was very curious to hear what he would say about the brain training software and apps and all of that. And what he found in his literature review, I don't think he did not himself do research on this specifically, was that basically those training programs improve your skills for that particular training, that game, that brain game. It doesn't translate to daily function. So I thought that was very interesting. I kind of had that hunch because I'm not a fan of doing everything on the screen. It really shuts down our nervous system. So key takeaway also, keep learning, keep challenging yourself, learning a new language, an instrument. I have loved dance my whole life. I'm really focusing on tap dance right now because of the rhythms, which are so great for the nervous system, but also the steps. There's almost a fine motor component to the feet, and learning those steps are almost like a puzzle, and it really works my brain. So I love that. So keep moving, manage your stress, and we've got tons of nervous system regulation tools for that. Manage your sleep, right? And this is what we do. This is what we do in my community. This is those exercises, those repatterning sequences that have visual and sounding components. That's what we do in the Gutsy Brain Movement membership. Now, right now, registration is not open, but you can join the wait list for that. We're probably going to open here in the next few months. So you can always join that and we'll let you know when it opens. Today, though, I always teach you a tool to take and use and run with. Today, I want to show you a very simple exercise that is fantastic for your brain and your body, the whole idea of a cross crawl. Now, a lot of you have done a cross crawl with me, and today we're going to add a little bit of a layer to it. So I'm going to do this standing. You can do it seated. You can always do it seated, right? So standing, we're just going to reach opposite hand to opposite thigh. I'm just going to fix my pant legs there. So reaching opposite hand to opposite thigh. Now, if you wanted to take it a little bit larger, you could reach the leg higher, coming across, Crossing this midline is so, so important for the right-left hemisphere connection in the brain and the body. Now there's lots of variations of this cross crawl. You could do a back body cross crawl. And in the email you get this weekend, it's going to have more variations, and I'm going to layer in some of those other senses like I've been talking about today. So anytime you feel fatigued, you feel overwhelmed, you feel lack of focus, give yourself the gift of getting up and doing a cross crawl. Super simple, right? And again, you can do it seated, you can do it lying down. And so I'm just going to drop in here and look for any questions or comments. Amy, I feel the same way as you do about dance, about learning ASL. ASL is American Sign Language, by the way, so amazing. And crochet patterns. I love figuring it all out. Yes, and those fine motor connections, this isn't really the topic for today, but when you look at the brain, there's something called the homunculus, and it shows the parts of the brain that are tied to different parts of your body. For example, your knee is in one area, but your hands take up a large part of your brain. So doing things with your hands, anybody that I work with that's looking into retiring and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do and they're wanting to take up a hobby, I'm always suggesting do something with your hands. Crocheting, knitting, learn to play piano. I have this lovely woman I work with who's been learning to play piano as an adult. How amazing is that? A gentleman I'm working with who's nearing retirement is taking woodworking classes. How fantastic is that? So I hope that this video has served you well. Again, a lot of you were curious about what I learned at the Neuroplasticity course last week, so I thought I would just drop in here and share some gems. And as always, you can leave your questions down below the replay and watch for later this week in your email. You'll get a video with more variations of cross crawl, and we'll layer in some other senses so you can have a really integrative experience and feel as though you're boosting your neuroplasticity. And in the meantime, just keep moving and integrating. Thanks for being here. Bye for now.